Hey everyone, how's it going? We are back with another Gloomhaven playthrough. This time I've got a friend with me, so we are doing a two-player game instead. Before we go any further, spoiler alert, we are going to be playing Scenario 14, so if you do not wish to be spoiled about that, don't watch any further. You will also note that we are using items involving up to Prosperity level 2 as well as an item reward from Scenario 3. So again, if you haven't unlocked any of these yet, you might not want to watch this video or at least put it off until later. We'll be playing Mindthief and Scoundrel at level 5, so we'll be spoiling ability cards up to level 5 as well. Alright, with the spoiler warning out of the way, we are going to proceed. First, let's talk about our character builds, abilities and items. My friend is going to be playing the Scoundrel today, and as you can see here, these are the items and abilities they'll be using. Sorry for the blurred out text. Hopefully you're familiar with the cards. I'll just point out some of the more important ones. Firstly, the Horn Helm item is going to be in play. This is an item that boosts your melee damage whenever you move at least 4 or more hexes on your turn, which the Scoundrel can fairly easily do. You can see there are quite a few cards, ability cards that have move 4 or move 5 on them. So going to be a good boost of damage for the Scoundrel, it being a passive effect and everything. The next thing to note is that my friend will be experimenting with Visage of the Inevitable, the level 5 card. A very rare card in the sense that it allows the Scoundrel to outright execute or kill an enemy, and it's a non-loss, unlike most other execute effects which tend to be single use. So this can be repeated as many times as the Scoundrel wants, as long as the enemies and allies are positioned correctly. So watch out for this, it's going to be potent if my Scoundrel friend can set it up properly. Right? The Scoundrel starts with 14 hit points, so a fairly sizable amount for someone who is otherwise quite a glass cannon. Now let's move on to the Mindthief, which I'll continue to play, same as last time. Only this time, I'll be actually experimenting with a different Mindthief build. I'll be going with a different level 3 card this time. If you remember, the last time I played Mindthief, we actually used Brain Leech as our level 3 ability card. This time we're going to use Silent Screen, the card on the bottom right. And we actually want the augment effect of Heal 2 Range 2. Now some of you might ask, is it really better than the Mind's Weakness? And the answer is not really, but we are going to use the level 5 card Mass Hysteria to put these two augments in place simultaneously. So every melee attack, I hope, ideally if we get to that point, we will not only boost our attack damage by 2, but we'll also perform a heal 2 in range 2. So that's really awesome, and I can't wait to see how effective this double augment build is. Of course, I can't use it in my campaign playthrough because I took the other level 3 card instead, but I'm going to experiment with it here. Now, you don't see the item deck. It's mostly the same deck as I had before. However, because I spent my money allocated to me on items, it's important to note that I will not be using any enhancements. So you see the Strengthen that has been appended on Empathetic Assault. That is in play for my main campaign, but in this particular playthrough, we will play as though the Strengthen is not stuck on Empathetic Assault. So I do not have any sources of Strengthen in my deck at all. Instead, advantage is going to come from Eagle-Eyed Goggles, which I've purchased for this particular playthrough. Right? So that's the Mindthief, pretty squishy at 10 hit points at level 5, but we'll make do with that. Today we'll be playing Scenario 14, and the objective is to kill all monsters. Plain and simple. Because we are both level 5, we are going to play on Scenario difficulty number 3, normal difficulty. And despite it being normal difficulty, this scenario poses an extreme challenge for the Scoundrel Mindthief duo. One of the interesting features about this particular duo, the Mindthief and the Scoundrel, is that they are both rogue characters, so they excel at dealing single target damage. And are both very much glass cannons in that they have fairly low HP. So because they both attack in melee range generally, the Frost Demons and Hounds with their retaliate damage are going to hurt real bad. We'll have to find some way to dance around the retaliate damage, and it really doesn't help matters that the Hound has immobilized abilities on top of that as well. The Mindthief and Scoundrel all fairly reliant on positioning themselves properly to minimize damage taken are going to struggle with this particular scenario. Let's see if we can overcome this in the playthrough. And so we begin in the very first room, spawning the monsters according to the 2-player layout as specified in the scenario book. Now you notice that we are immediately confronted by a horde of hounds, and while normally the solution to this is to play a bunch of AoE cards, unfortunately, playing as the Mindthief and Scoundrel, there aren't a lot of AoE attacks, so this is going to be really tricky for us. Thankfully, I'm level 5 as the Mindthief, so I have access to Mass Hysteria, an attack that hits up to 4 targets. So that's going to be really helpful. While it won't do a lot of damage, certainly won't kill the hounds at any rate, at least I can muddle them, and thankfully I'm going first before everyone else, so the muddle will take effect before we get hit for the first time. While I'm at it, I'm also going to boost my attacks with the Eagle Eye Goggles, which will apply to the entire of Mass Hysteria. Not that it would change much, especially given that I keep drawing the same number on advantage. But at least while I'm not doing a lot of damage, I'm muddling the hounds, which is the most important part. Again, I draw a pair of identical cards, so advantage really doesn't help very much here. But the muddling will really help with mitigating the damage from the hounds, which, while not very significant at an attack 2, for this round, they will definitely add up with multiples. The next thing I do here is to perform the bottom action of Silent Scream, which allows me to move and then push all adjacent enemies at the end of my movement. Now, I perform a bit of an illegal push here. The hound that was to the northeast hex of me should have been pushed further north as opposed to northwest, because that's not a legal push, but it doesn't matter in the end because the hounds will get to move on their turn into melee range anyway. Really, the main objective of using the push here was to free up the hex so that the Scoundrel could move into the northeast hex of me. This allows us to gang up the hound that is now isolated from its allies, dealing a hefty chunk of damage. Unfortunately, not enough to kill it. We would really have loved to kill that hound there, because you notice what we did here was to move ourselves into a line formation along with the obstacle that is to the west of my Mindthief. So when we generate this barricade, this line, the enemy melee hounds are unable to move to the opposite side of us, right? Towards the south of the line. What this means is that we have reduced the attack surface at which the hounds can hit us from. Only the 2 hexes to the north of our respective figurines can be used as attack spaces by the hounds, meaning that the hound furthest away from us, the one that has full HP right now, northernmost one, can't get in melee range of us. So we have mitigated 1 hound's worth of damage that way, and every damage point that is mitigated matters. Unfortunately, I've taken a lot of damage by this point. I'm down to 1 HP because the Living Spirit last turn, the Elite Living Spirit at that, got a hefty attack 5 off of me. So I'm severely wounded now, and I'm looking to heal up this coming turn. Right, the Scoundrel moves before me. We both play our pretty much our lowest initiative cards. Mine is second lowest. Scoundrel moves first with initiative 3, attacking the Northern Hound and killing it. My Scoundrel partner took that Hound away because the Scoundrel usually does more single target damage than the Mindthief does. So reserving the Southern Hound for myself because I deal less damage. Because what I'm going to do is to use the Mind's Weakness to attack the Hound, which is a very low damage move. However, my bottom action is going to be slightly more impactful because it is going to apply stun to the enemy. That's right, I'm using the bottom of Perverse Edge. And I'm going to use this stun to basically mitigate more damage, stunning the Northern Hound, the one that did not get to attack us. The damage here again isn't very relevant. The main thing here is to generate ice and to apply the stun effect on the Hound. And then I'm going to use the healing potion here to go up to 4 hit points, just in case my melee attack on the Mind's Weakness misses. I do not want the retaliate damage from the Hound to kill me, being on 1 hit point at the start of my turn. So I draw my attack modifier card. It is enough to kill the Hound with poison, so the Southern Hound dies. This leaves us with 3 enemies attacking us this round. However, 1 is stunned from Perverse Edge, so really only 1 of the Hounds and the Living Spirit is attacking. And thankfully, because my Scoundrel ally chose a low initiative card, they will be the focus of the attacks this turn, which means that I don't have to worry about taking damage. Right, we draw our next few cards, and because Ice is infused from Perverse Edge last turn, I am able to stun the enemies. But that's not very relevant because my 29 initiative on Frigid Apparition apparently isn't enough. I'm going last this turn. Instead, the 4 initiative from my Scoundrel partner will allow them to go first, and they have to make it count because the enemies are moving right after her. Right, my Scoundrel ally played some very powerful cards here. First, they are going to use the bottom action of Smoke Bomb, and that allows them to perform a pull. Now, this pull doesn't do any damage, but it synergizes with some of the other Scoundrel cards. As we are going to see, my Scoundrel ally is going to follow that up with Flanking Strike, which is a bread and butter move of the Scoundrel, allowing them to deal damage, increase damage if the target is adjacent to allies, which it is. Because of the pull, the Hound was moved in melee range of me, allowing Flanking Strike's damage to be boosted. This allowed for a clean, easy kill by the Scoundrel. And then my Scoundrel ally is going to use Stamina Potion to recover some cards. Right, unfortunately, the Hound and the Living Spirit get to attack this turn, and most notably, the Hound does inflict and immobilize. Again, because my Scoundrel ally decided to play a faster card than me, they will bear the brunt of attacks this round. So my ally is going to get immobilized and murdered as well by the Living Spirit. So a lot of damage coming my allies' way. So they're definitely wanting to recover some cards before they get the next move. So just a quick note on Gloomhaven's strategy before moving on with the game. You'll remember that I took 5 damage from the Elite Living Spirit last turn, and a lot of players in my position would have chosen to sacrifice a card from their hand rather than to soak up the 5 damage, especially when it's half of your character's hit points. It seems logical to do so. However, your hit points are actually a resource that should be managed properly. It doesn't really matter whether you finish the scenario with full hit points or 1 hit point. And there are definitely opportunities further down the road where I can either recover my own damage or position myself in such a way as to not take damage. Being able to identify that and then preserving your cards so as to preserve your longevity is actually a key part of Gloomhaven, because if you exhaust too early, because you lose too many cards from your hand to damage, you're not contributing as much damage to the team as you would like as the Mindthief, and that hurts the team in the long run. Alright, now back to the game. We've missed quite a bit of action. Basically what happened last turn was that I identified that the Elite Living Spirit was a huge problem for us because it was dealing massive damage from range. So I decided to get up close and personal with the Living Spirit and kill it last turn, stunning it with Perverse Edge and basically not allowing to act any further. We only have the single Hound remaining, and being the Scoundrel Mindthief duo, you can expect that we won't have too much difficulty dispatching this Hound. So we're just going to launch our attacks here. Here I come with a very difficult decision as I use Fearsome Blade to bring the Hound down to 1 hit point. I have 2 options here. Either I activate the push on Fearsome Blade, which would push the Hound out of melee range and therefore allow me to avoid the retaliate. However, by doing so, I'm gimping my ally's attack because what my ally Scoundrel played was the card that inflicts a wound on the Hound if there is another allied hero in melee range. If I do the push, I will no longer be in melee range of the Hound, which means that my Scoundrel's wound will not activate. So if they happen to draw a null on their attack, the wound will take the Hound will take no damage, it will not take a wound, and it will not die, and it will get to launch an attack 3 on us. Because of this possibility, I wanted to mitigate our worst case scenario. I left the Hound in melee range. So yeah, you see there my ally drew a pointless times 2 times. Any attack modifier would have suffice because the wound would have killed the 1 hit point Hound when they attempt to start their turn anyway. So yeah, another key strategy in Gloomhaven is to consider the worst case scenario, which is usually drawing a null from your attack modifier deck, and then playing around mitigating that worst case scenario. In this case, obviously the worst case didn't happen. We did not draw the null, but if they did, I'll be so thankful that I did not push the Hound, even though I took 1 arguably unnecessary damage there. If the Hound wasn't killed on that turn, things would have gotten really gnarly. Right, so now we just move into melee range of the door, and just in time because both of us have exhausted all the cards in our hand. So during this turn, we are both going to get a free long rest. Neither of us are going to be taking any damage from monsters because there are no monsters that are revealed. So we can easily take a very free long rest. This is something that you should try to coordinate as much as possible in a 2-player game. With 4 players, it's a lot harder because characters tend to have very varying hand sizes, so it's very difficult to line up long rests. But here, with the 10 hand size of Mindthief and the 9 hand size of Scoundrel with the minus stamina potion, we were able to coordinate our long rests. So we both got 2 free hit points, and I got to refresh my Eagle Eye Goggles. That was sweet. Now we choose our cards to discard because it's a long rest. That's another huge benefit of coordinating long rests. I chose to give up Feedback Loop, my move 4 jump, my only jump card, partially because I looked ahead into the scenario and deemed that there was not much jumping necessary. But also because I have sufficient movement in the rest of my deck. As for my Scoundrel ally, they decided to give up their Quick Hands card, mostly because it's basically an inferior version of Duelist Advance. Sure, it has the loot 1 on the bottom, but since we're not playing for money, it being a one-shot and all, Quick Hands becomes very irrelevant very quickly. Now we proceed with the door opening turn, and my ally Scoundrel drew, or rather used a fast initiative card. Well, lightning fast. I can never match that speed. But they also decided to unilaterally seize control of my Mindthief figurine when moving through the door. We only discovered that later on in the playthrough, but thankfully this does not affect the outcome of the game because we were both standing equidistant from the door. So it didn't really matter which figurine we used. It was fairly interchangeable at this point of time. Here you also notice my Scoundrel ally using a key Gloomhaven strategy with respect to opening doors, right? You stand in melee range of the doors prior to opening and then play a high movement card, a move 4, allowing you to adequately react to the door opening. Depending on whether the monsters spawn near or far, depending on whether they are melee or ranged, you can then move to the appropriate hacks and deal with the enemies accordingly. My Scoundrel ally also played an attack that is ranged. This allows them to have great flexibility over their attacks. You know, it's less likely to miss than say a melee attack if there were no monsters within melee range that could be reached in melee range. So here you see the Flurry of Blades being played as the ranged attack with target 3. Of course, my Scoundrel ally here only can target 2 that are in range, both Frost Demons. You'll notice that the Scoundrel elected not to go into melee range of the Frost Demons simply because of the Retaliate 2. That really hurts the Scoundrel. As I mentioned in the opening, the high Retaliate values of all these enemies is one of the biggest hurdles in this game that we have to overcome, and firing off ranged attacks is a good way of doing so. Too bad my Scoundrel ally drew a null, but on the other attack that hit, it whittled away almost half of the Frost Demon's hit points, so that was pretty good. Now it's my turn to move, and we notice that our Scoundrel ally has gone invisible because, you know, the Frost Demons are pretty painful. Attack 3 right there. So using the Cloak of Invisibility to, keep themselves safe for a turn. And now it's my turn to decide what to do. Now, we actually intended to coordinate our invisibilities. We wanted to use them both on the same turn so that, the monsters have no targets at all, effectively giving us 1 to 2 turns to attack the monsters freely without taking damage. However, I chose to remain in sight of the monsters for a simple reason. This draws the monsters towards my position and conveniently puts the monsters in melee range of the Scoundrel without the Scoundrel having to take any damage. So that was a very nice, 1-2, coordination going on between the two of us. Right, so now it's my turn to go before the Scoundrel obviously wanting to go as late as possible in the turn to preserve as much of the invisibility as possible. So I'm going first, and I would love to move before the monsters so that they don't get an attack off. I can react to their attacks rather. So we are going to move into melee range of the Frost Demons. You'll notice that by this point, thanks to the long heals and my empathetic assault, I have healed up to full hit points. And now I can afford to do some melee damage to the Frost Demons without worrying too much. At this point, I'm going to play Silent Scream, and I've already activated Mass Hysteria's bottom effect, if you didn't notice. Last turn while I was standing, holding still on the door, I was playing Mass Hysteria for the bottom effect, which allows me to have 2 augments in play at once. So by doing the Silent Scream melee attack here, not only am I triggering the Mind's Weakness for additional damage, I'm also triggering the heal on Mass Hysteria. This allows me to heal my ally Scoundrel, who is now slightly wounded. So that's really nice. Silent Scream, obviously a heal that works not just on yourself, but on allies as well. Here I also go invisible, so now both of us are invisible. So for this entire turn, the Living Spirits and Frost Demons do absolutely nothing. It's now the Scoundrel's turn, and they execute the Frost Demon with 5 HP simply by using Visage of the Inevitable. That Frost Demon was to the south of both us, the Mindthief, and the Scoundrel. And because it was isolated from its allies and adjacent to both of us, it was swiftly executed. A very powerful move that swiftly dispatched one of our biggest threats. Now you'll notice that we swapped around our figurines because at this point we actually realized that we have been controlling the wrong figurines all this while. As mentioned earlier, this does not make a difference in the outcome of the game. Now you will see that after using the Visage, the Scoundrel decides to move backwards behind the cover of the obstacles. Now, you may think that this looks like a chicken move, leaving me exposed in the wild against all these scary monsters with less HP. However, there is rhyme and reason to this, and we will soon see how this all pans out. We proceed to the next turn, where I attempt to play as slow of an initiative as possible, because don't forget, I activated my invisibility cloak last turn. So I want to maximize the duration for which I'm invisible. Unfortunately, having expended most of my slow initiative cards in the augments, you notice I have both my augments active and in play right now, Mind's Weakness and Silent Scream. The slowest card I have is a 29 on Fearsome Blade. Or sorry, 27 I believe. Slower than the Scoundrel, but not slow enough to go before, or rather after, the Frost Demons and the Living Spirit. So here is why my Scoundrel friend decided to run behind the cover of obstacles, because they wanted to execute the pull of the Smoke Bomb, and by doing this pull, the Living Spirit is now brought in melee range of myself, the Mindthief, allowing the Scoundrel to follow up this pull with one of their gang up attacks in Open Wound. Now what Open Wound does is when an ally is in melee range, which I am, Open Wound would inflict the wound status on the Living Spirit, and that was absolutely crucial here, as the Scoundrel did 4 damage, mitigated by the 2 shield of the Living Spirit, leaving them at exactly 1 hit point. It's still alive, but with the wound effect, it will die as soon as it attempts to take its turn. So the Living Spirit is effectively dead. Well, yeah, that's pretty good. So now, as the Mindthief, I can focus on dealing with the Frost Demon right in front of me. To deal with it, I will use the Fearsome Blade here to attempt a push. Of course, I draw a null, so it does no damage, but the push means that I don't take any retaliate damage from the Frost Demon either. This null damage, however, still triggers my Silent Scream, allowing me to heal up after that, going back to full hit points. Right? I had 7 hit points, I'm going up to 9 as we speak. Now we proceed with the monster's turn. Frost Demons are going to do stuff. The Frost Demon nearest to me is stunned from the bottom attack that I executed this turn. I used the Perverse Edge bottom to stun the Frost Demon, so only one Frost Demon got to attack me here. After that Perverse Edge, I followed it up with my favorite attack, Frigid Apparition. This does plus 0 damage, so 5 damage total with the Mind's Weakness and the stun effect. So this means that only one Frost Demon gets to act this turn. So we're gonna do the damage here. We're gonna inflict the stun, and we're gonna consume the ice that I generated last turn. So this stun lock chain that the Mindthief can provide is absolutely crucial in keeping us alive, by mitigating the amount of damage that monster can by basically suppressing the monster's ability to attack. And it's pretty fearful, this one, because they do have an AoE attack this time. So the Frost Demon that is represented by the red dice here, the one that's on full health, gets to pull off its huge AoE attack on both the Scoundrel and the Mindthief this turn. However, the Scoundrel's not going to let them get away empty-handed, get away with this. But by using Flanking Strike, both because that Frost Demon was in melee range of both of us, it is going to take lots of damage. 5 damage to be exact, leaving both of them severely wounded. Now we resolve the attack of the Frost Demon, the AoE attack. So myself as the Mindthief is going to take some damage, and a null card is drawn, so the Scoundrel does not get hit at all. We proceed on with the next turn, and we'll try to finish off these Frost Demons. It's absolutely crucial that we actually land the killing blows here, because we do not wish to take any more retaliate damage. Starting with the Scoundrel, again you see the Initiative 3 versus Initiative 8. This is going to be a recurring theme for the rest of this game. The Scoundrel decides to gain advantage, mitigating the null card that's in the deck. So there's no way they're going to miss. So this attack is going to be a guaranteed kill regardless of what the Scoundrel draws. Dead Frost Demon. Now it's up to me to follow this up. What do I have here? I do have the Frigid Apparition, right? I believe I recovered that with the Stamina Potion last turn. So it is going to wipe out the Frost Demon as well with its high base damage. And we are also going to get the Silent Scream heal as a nice bonus. So you can see the full power of the double augment Mindthief coming into play here. Yeah, having both the damage amplification from the Mind's Weakness and the Silent Scream heal is really helping us have this sustain going on against all these enemies with Retaliate. So I really like this Mindthief build in this particular scenario just because we are taking so much unwanted damage. The Silent Scream heal is really helping out, while playing so many augments has definitely reduced my longevity. I find that my melee attacks are a lot more powerful than they would be otherwise. Right, this form of support build is really helping out with yeah, allowing us to attack enemies in melee range more liberally. Now we close in on the door opening strat again. Once again, the Scoundrel's up, simply because they have more than 10 health and I only have 6 health here, so it makes a lot of sense for the Scoundrel to be the one opening the door. Once again, you'll notice that they got into melee range first before opening the door. This allows them to be most flexible with their movement once the room is revealed. And yeah, this is a very scary room, most notably the Elite Frost Demon at the back. 14 hit points, so many hit points that we have to use 3 dice to represent its hit point count. So yeah, very, very terrifying. So terrifying that the Scoundrel is once again chickening out, going back to the previous room, because everything is going to attack the Scoundrel otherwise. So we want to be at a safe distance. And I'm going to follow up as the Mindthief with Silent Scream. So I recovered the Silent Scream card on my resting. I think it was a long rest. No, it was a short rest. I short rested and recovered my Silent Scream. It's a really nice augment to recover here, because it is a base attack 2 as opposed to the base attack 1 of the level 1 augments. So base attack 2 is very strong, and I will happily deal +2 damage from Mind's Weakness onto that Hound, taking some retaliate damage but healing it up with Silent Scream. So I might be in a bit of trouble because I'm further forward compared to the Scoundrel, meaning that I will bear the brunt of attacks. However, the Living Spirit and Frost Demon simply don't have the range to reach me this turn. They're just gonna yeah, amble forward, and yeah, that's it basically. So we resolve the movement here, and then we proceed on to the next turn. Now this next turn is going to be absolutely crucial in yeah, deciding the outcome of the game. We need to land our powerful attacks, and this is where we can more liberally use our lost attacks, because this is the final room of the scenario. You can see the treasure chest in the corner. We are going to completely ignore that, as we have already you know, opened the treasure chest in our normal playthrough. I'm just putting the treasure chest there, you know, just to line up with what you see in the scenario book. Now the Scoundrel goes first with their 3 initiative, and they are going to execute the Hound that is in the corner there, because once again it's isolated from its allies and surrounded by lots of us. The Visage is going to come in once again, a repeatable execution attack. It's non-loss. This is so good. And yeah, my Scoundrel ally making the full use of Visage by just completely wiping out enemies before they even get a chance to attack, which was key because the Hound would have moved before me and would have gotten in some significant damage if it weren't for the Visage. So this allows me to move next, and I'm going to move into melee range of basically everything here. This seems like a really bad idea until you realize that I'm about to unleash my full potential this turn. First, I use the bottom of Fearsome Blade Yes, it has a bottom and it's very powerful. It's a move 4, attack 2, which just decimates the living spirit that was next to me, the isolated living spirit. Don't forget, it's amplified by both my augments. So yeah, clean and easy kill on that living spirit. So that leaves us with 2 remaining enemies, which will both get hit by my top attack, my Frigid Apparition. Right? This is my most powerful attack, but it's doubled in power because I'm about to use all my items here, the Battle Axe and the Eagle Eye Goggles. So the Battle Axe allows me to hit both of these enemies, and because ice is infused, they are both guaranteed to be stunned. So basically the monsters do not get a turn this turn because they're either killed outright or stunned. The elite Frost Demon takes massive damage as I drew a +2 off the advantaged attack. Not to mention it's stunned. And the living spirit is just killed outright here because I drew a green card. Yes, a +1, that's enough to kill the living spirit. 5 base damage +1 is overkill, in fact. So the enemies were just completely removed by my power turn. Right, being able to attack twice in one turn is absolutely amazing. Fearsome Blade plus Frigid Apparition plus Ice plus all my items. Yeah, it just feels good to pull off such a big turn. Alright, so the enemies with their slow initiative and their status just don't get to do anything, and you can probably see by this point that we are almost certainly going to win this scenario. This elite Frost Demon has only half its health remaining. Despite being Retaliate 3, it doesn't really matter because I have Silent Scream active, so I'm only taking net 1 Retaliate damage every time I hit the elite Frost Demon. Right, so my Scoundrel ally is probably just going to go faster than me here and finish off the Elite Demon, and yep, they sure are. While they can't play Visage of the Inevitable because it's an Elite monster, Visage doesn't work on Elites, the Scoundrel has more than enough high damage cards to finish off the Frost Demon. All they have to do is to draw something like a, +1 or even a +2, and they'll finish off the Frost Demon. Especially considering the bottom, but whoops! The Scoundrel drew a null! They drew a null! So, I guess the Frost Demon gets to live one more turn here. Right. Too bad. So, I guess it's up to me to deal 7 damage this turn. That is kind of a tall order even for a Mindthief with double augment active. Having used my powerful Frigid Apparition on the last turn, I don't have that much attack potential left. So, I'm just going to use a vanilla attack 2, right? This is something that Mindthieves can do very easily and very effectively because most of their effectiveness actually comes from their augments, which do apply on regular attacks. So by using a regular attack, I'm going to be able to deal severe damage to the Frost Demon, and we are going to suffer the retaliate damage, but that's completely fine. And we drew a +1, so that's going to be 5 damage, leaving it at a measly 2 health. You'll notice another amazing thing about being the Mindthief Scoundrel duo is that because they're rogues, they go very, very fast. Single digit initiatives are pretty common, and this allows us to go before the defensive moves of enemies. You see the Frost Demon here has a shield 2. The shield 2 will have severely mitigated the amount of damage that we would have done, but because we got to act before the Frost Demon, the shield 2 was not in play when we did the attacks. So yeah, basically the Frost Demon did nothing last turn because all they did was shield themselves. And here, the Scoundrel finishes off the Frost Demon with a huge overkill attack. You'll notice that one of the nice things about the Scoundrel is that with the Horn Helm, right, as long as they play a move 4 action on the bottom, they get a free +1 damage to their next melee attack. The Scoundrel, of course, having lots of move 4s in the deck, and being a very mobile character in general, makes such good use of the Horn Helm. I think they triggered it at least 3 times this game. It's only now that I'm explaining the mechanic. So that is something that a Scoundrel did here to ensure the killing blow on the Frost Demon. And that's the end of the scenario. A fairly convincing victory.